All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. On this episode, we have special guest Alan Orlić. Alan is an American-Croat who moved from New York to Croatia, where he eventually started Tinker Labs. Tinker Labs is an educational project to help kids learn STEM subjects in a more fun and effective manner. And in this episode, we'll learn how it all started and how it works. Alan, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
I appreciate you taking the time to come on here. I've already got a couple questions right off the bat.
Mhm.
I want to ask about some of the differences between New York and you're now living in Osijek.
Mhm.
But before we sort of get into that, can you start us off on, sort of your Croatian background and, growing up in the US, what were you doing there?
Sure. My parents moved to the US 51 years ago. Um, and I was born over there in New York. And my brothers and I were raised in New York. Went to school over there. I finished my PhD in New York, and then met my wife in our where my father has his hometown. My dad's from the coast in Vinišće near Trogir. My mom's from Drniš, or in Otovice near Drniš. And they met over there, came to the U.S. And as a family, we always spoke Croatian and English together. And we used to go back quite often while we were kids. And one summer, I met this girl, and then we stayed in touch and everything. And then we got married in Croatia, and then I went back to finish my PhD in New York. And then after finishing my PhD, we decided maybe it would be better to move back to Croatia than start teaching at some school university in the U.S. We had this business idea maybe that we wanted to try, and our first daughter was born in the U.S. She was 2.5 years old when we moved, and that was 10 years ago now. So
It's the classic fell in love with a Croatian girl story, huh?
yeah, Bosnian, but
Yeah, Bosnian. Um,
yeah.
so you were involved in the Croatian community back at home, back in New York. You've been often enough to Croatia, but now living in Osijek, full time. How different is it for you going from New York to Osijek?
Um, well, I mean that may have been one of the reasons why we wanted to move was kind of that social raising a child in New York. I mean, I love New York. I go back probably once a year. Um, but I feel like one of the differences in we're in Osijek now, which is kind of interesting because we only had a few friends from Osijek. So when we decided to move, we were offered either Osijek as a place to start the first franchise, which was Helen Doran English for Children, or Dubrovnik, and we're considering Dubrovnik for a while. It'd be nice living in Dubrovnik. And then these friends from Osijek said, "Hey, listen, we'll help you get set up and everything if you want to come." And then packed our bags and moved to Osijek. Never been here before, but now we love it. We feel like we're really been adopted by the community here. And so now, that we have two daughters, I just love the lifestyle where they can walk to school, tennis, whatever they have. It's very safe, very you know, communal. Great friends. We really feel like I don't know. That's one of the differences. I mean, not to say we lived on Long Island in New York, so it's not a very rough place or anything, but just in general, I think I kind of one of the major factors was I think lifestyle.
Mhm. To me, that sort of reminds me, it's like of my parents' generation, how they talk about, oh, we'd ride our bikes to school, walk to school, whatever that. And that's sort of what I feel like sort of all
Yeah,
of Croatia is kind of like now. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's sort of the vibe I get.
yeah, I think so. I mean, I, living in New York for a long time, the traffic and everything kind of gets to you, and then so when you're over here, you can ride your bike or walk or rarely get in the car. It's
Mhm.
nice to have everything right there. Like I say, for us, it's the measure of a man. So it's not too big, but it's not too small. So it's got everything. And as far as we're concerned, it's a really nice place. Plus, it was a great place to start the business. You know, so we did.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
hear Osijek is quite the business, entrepreneurship, and tech hub.
yeah,
I've
yeah. It's
never
really
been, but I've been hearing good things about Osijek.
yeah. There are a lot of great tech companies over here, and yeah.
Well, let's talk about, Tinker Labs a little bit. How did that? So as I understand it, you came with a different business, or you were franchising a slightly different business.
Yeah, well, first we came to open up a Helen Doran franchise. So we were franchisees in Osijek, and then in 2012, and then I think 2014 maybe we opened up another location in Slavonski Brod because we we saw that the business model was good. Why not stick with it? Open up another location, and then around 2016 I started Tinker Labs, opened the company and everything, and I had the idea for a while to create something like that. Seeing the franchise business model work and seeing that, well, okay, we can't sell English to children in the US. What kind of things in that supplemental education sector do I see that there's a need for? And I've always been interested in multidisciplinary learning and subjects, and just in general feel that children nowadays are lacking in that hands-on learning environment. And STEM subjects are very important and popular now. And I figured, well, STEM is something that we can kind of make interesting and take the same or a similar model that Helen Doran uses. And instead of English, let's teach science, technology, engineering, art, math. The idea is that every week we have a different subject. So it could be biology, chemistry, forensics, engineering, physics, right? And we do 4 or 5 experiments per class around one topic, and we do it in a fun, hands-on way, And so we started with the first program in 2016 over here in Osijek, and since then, we have 6 programs now. So we have a program for 4 to 6-year-olds, 6 to 10-year-olds, and 10 to 12-year-olds. So we have 6 full-year programs, which I think is pretty impressive,
Mm-hmm. How many total students do you have? Is this something that it's like say 3-month long program, or you just sign up for one class at a time? How does that work?
That's the thing. It's a full year program, so it's 40 weeks, so it tracks the entire school year. And so 40 weeks times 6 years, so a child could basically start in kindergarten and stay there till 3rd or 4th grade with us, which is I think something that's fantastic for kids, because the idea is not to replace their education, but just a supplement to get them inspired in become inspired learners and self-learners, and have fun, not think of learning as something that's a drag or memorizing, but really get them passionate about something that they might want to do in the future.
Now, do you think most of your students that are there are ones that don't excel maybe in school at these subjects and need the extra motivation, or are they the ones that love these subjects and want more of it, or is there sort of a mix?
I think there's a mix. But to get back to your question about how many students, so we started in 2016 with our first location. It was a pilot program. Okay, let's see how it works with the teacher in the classroom, and then I think it was 2017 or 18. I had my first master franchiser for Croatia. So I decided I didn't want to take on that role, but I wanted to have someone, be the master franchiser for Croatia. And fortunately, this colleague friend of mine from Vinkovci is much better at that kind of business end than I am. And so now we have, I think, 36 locations in Croatia, plus like 8 more for next year. So we'll probably have about 50 locations in Croatia by next year. And we also have Serbia, Bosnia, Macedonia, Hungary. We're in negotiations with a few other countries like Slovenia, Italy, Germany. So our scaling is going pretty well. And the idea is, I think, to offer something for every child, right? So I think, in fact, that I heard recently that they might implement something in Croatia, in fact, to see what children are better at STEM subjects, which is great, I think. But we had something similar when I was growing up on Long Island. It was called the Gifted course. And then later they changed the name to Wider Horizons because that was politically incorrect to call certain kids gifted, right? But a lot of the idea for Tinker Labs came out of that. So, you give kids the opportunity to do something a little more creative because they're, a little smarter or whatever. But my idea was, I don't like to, segregate and say, well, this kid I think is smarter and he deserves. I think every child is super smart. They have that, childhood brilliance that just needs to be, triggered, I think. So it was to make it for everyone, really.
And wow, so I didn't realize you were expanding into so many countries. You mentioned, tell me again, Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, even
Yeah.
Germany.
Well, in Germany, we're in negotiations now,
Oh,
so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, last year or 2 years ago, we expanded into Serbia and Montenegro. Last year into Bosnia and Macedonia, and then this year in Hungary, working up our first school.
wow,
So
and still more plans to keep scaling into other countries.
yeah,
Wow, so it must be, I mean, I think that even speaks for itself in the success of the program that, I mean, the kids like it, the parents like it. What sort of feedback have you gotten from the kids and parents?
I mean, mostly it's all positive feedback. I love it. It's like, if I'm ever feeling down, I just open up Instagram and see all the schools that are open, all the happy faces on the kids. I say, well, we're doing something good for the community,
Yeah.
and the franchisees are happy. I think, overall, it's really rewarding. I think this year we had like 100 instructors, teachers working, teaching Tinker Labs programs, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, it's 100 people that are employed.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot. That's awesome. What
Yeah.
what do you think as far as teaching STEM or the
Uh-huh.
programs revolving around STEM, comparing and contrasting between Croatia and the US? Do you think it's sort of a similar attitude about it, or is it completely different?
Oh, I mean, before I started writing the program I kind of did a lot of research, just in general in what the education systems are like worldwide and everything. And I came to the conclusion that it's basically similar everywhere. So like people are going to bitch about the education system wherever they are. Like, okay, they say Finland's really great or Korea, but they have their problems also. So if you look in general, the common idea is, oh, in Croatia, the elementary and high school is so much harder than the U.S. and the kids are so much smarter. Yeah, that's nice if you want to think that, but if you look at the actual statistics, PISA scores and whatnot, Croatia has been one level underneath the U.S. in math, which is I think the easiest indicator, right? So on a list of I don't know how many there are, but I think the U.S. is right in the middle at 80 or 79, and Croatia was at 80. So it's like I think in general the the systems are very similar. With the U.S., when I went to school, it still wasn't that. What was it? I forget which president uh, implemented some changes, so it was, I think, a little better. But then since then, No Child Left Behind, right? The No Child Left Behind Act, which was, I guess, good, but I think the U.S. system has its issues as well. And what the No Child Left Behind Act created was a culture of teach the test, where teachers don't have that freedom to do something fun. Let's teach the theory, the concepts. But okay, you have a test. This is what you need to know for the test. Based on those test scores, that's going to determine how much money we're going to get for the government. Blah blah. So it's like it's not a good situation for the kids, I think.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I think in Croatia it's similar. The public education system.
Yeah, well, I remember for me that was the worst part about, trying learning is just to teach the test. You're only
Yeah,
learning what you have to do to, get a good grade on the test, pass the test, as opposed to the things you're actually interested in. And sort
exactly.
of on that idea, you guys created your own textbooks, right? So what
Yeah.
goes into, sort of the process of creating that and what curriculum you want to go over?
Uh-huh. Well, I started out with the idea first for Tinker Town. So that's the class for children in first grade, first to fourth grade, basically, right? And the idea was to have basically a microcosm of a town and what you would need in order for that town to run effectively, right? So each week we learned about, a different person in that town. So it could be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, whatever. And then we see what that person, what kind of scientific background does that person need to fulfill their job, right? Um, and I thought that was kind of an interesting way to approach each new lesson. And then so let's say if it's you know a pilot, then I'll learn about aerodynamics, and then I'll do 4 or 5 experiments around aerodynamics. In first grade, which is pretty cool because they're not going to learn about aerodynamics until I don't know eighth grade, you know. But if you teach it in a fun way, they can learn about, lift and drag and all these things. So that was the idea for Tinker Town. And then the idea for Tinker Tots, which is our kindergarten age program. There we have basically storybooks that also follow. They're four storybooks, 10 weeks each. And the idea is that the 10th week is a summary of what they had learned in the past 9 weeks. So they read the story, and then in the story, there's basically a summary of all the past 9 experiments that they did, So because, kindergarten kids don't really know how to read and write that well. So we thought that we'd kind of embed it into a story, that summary. And then we also have Tinker World, which is for older children. And that's designed as a macrocosm, right? So there we're looking at history and geography. And basically every week we learn about a different scientist or inventor, which is pretty cool, because then we had the freedom to say, okay, we want to put more women scientists in this because we're promoting who we think are important in the world of science and technology, right? So of course we have Tesla, Einstein, Marie Curie, and then me and my team over here in Osijek, which is really been fantastic. I'm really fortunate to have a really good team of employees, and we all really work well together. We come up with an idea for a class. Okay, let's say we want to do a class on Einstein. What are we going to do? We kind of brainstorm, come up with what the class is going to look like, and then we tell the designers, okay, let's make few pictures like this, and what the workbook question should look like, and make them fun. And so it's very much a collaboration, or it has been now.
And that when you're saying class, that's the 1 year, sort of 1 year long class.
Yeah. So we have Tinker Tots that lasts for 1 year, and then there's a follow up class, Tinker Tots Plus, Tinker Town, and then Tinker Town Plus, Tinker World Plus. So there's 6 full year courses altogether.
I see.
And we have books and everything for each course.
And how long ago, remind me, what year did you start this?
2016.
2016. Wow. So have you had kids that have been, there for 4, 5, 6 years?
Yeah, we had our first, graduating kids that have been there through all 6 years.
Oh, that's pretty cool to see that.
Yeah, it is.
Do you have what sort of future plans do you have? Do you have any plans to go above and beyond, as far as like the 8th grade level?
I think future plans are kind of stick with the franchise model and scale it up so that we can expand eventually into the US. And even Germany is a big market now that we're considering. But we have to make sure that the infrastructure is there, before we could totally commit to say, okay, this is the right partner for Germany or the US, and let's do it. In terms of programs, we were thinking about maybe doing a Tinker Garden program. So for children that are, even younger, 3 or 4 years old, because we found that that's one of our, most rewarding and fun classes that we do, because there's not much for kids that are that young, but you really can get them excited about stuff when they are younger. And that would maybe be something where we would incorporate some kind of joint learning with the parents. So the parents would be there with the children, and then also something that we can maybe eventually pitch in the US as kind of just a separate kindergarten course. So Tinker Garden and Tinker Tots Plus, that's basically 3 years of courses that we could offer to private kindergartens in the US, let's say. That's one idea. Yeah. Another idea is to start developing some of our own line of didactic games, that are kind of tied to the courses that we teach. So there's a lot of materials that we provide our franchisees and that they have to produce. And we realized maybe we should start producing some of these and maybe trying to sell them as standalone products, So that's one other direction I go in. And the third direction is something we've been thinking about for a long time, but haven't been able to commit much time to it. Is maybe a museum, so like a STEM museum, Tinker Museum, which a little smaller scale, but someplace where kids can go and really do a lot of hands-on learning.
Well, that'd be pretty cool. It sounds like a massive undertaking, but that would be awesome.
Yeah. That's kind of my mm, goal, one of my passions eventually to see that come to fruition.
Oh, that would be great. Um, Alan, sort of as we're winding down here, I want to ask just one more question, unrelated to, Tinker Labs and everything, but more so about New York and the
Mhm.
US. Is there anything you miss about, say, New York? We'll say specifically New York.
Yeah. I miss the museums over there for sure. The cultural, it's nice to go to New York for 10 days. I was there last year for the ACAP conference. They invited me as a guest speaker, and it was really great being over there. You know, in that hustle bustle, it's fantastic if you're there for 10 days. But if you're there every day, it can be a little drain on you. I have a lot of good friends that are still in New York and the U.S., and I love to just visit them. Um, but my parents are still spend half the year in New York, half the year in Croatia, so obviously go see them. Um, yeah,
Yeah, well, that's nice. I think for me, I've never been to New York. I was always a West Coast guy. I've stayed in Los Angeles. I think Denver was as far as I got over there. But I mean, I miss sort of the food diversity that you can
yeah,
sort of. I miss Mexican food mostly.
yeah. I hear you. That's definitely true. But I like to cook a lot also, so um,
Yeah. What sort of things are you cooking?
I'm mostly Dalmatian, but brudet, peka, that kind of stuff.
Taco's got to be one of my favorites. Maybe
Yeah,
top that and some yanyetina. Those got to
yeah,
be my top two favorites. All
yeah. I
right.
like to
Well,
experiment.
Alan, sorry, go ahead.
I like to experiment with cooking. I think again, it's kind of one of those STEM things where it's an art and a science in order to figure out how to make something well and how to cook it well.
That's
Yeah,
true. Yeah. Especially when you think of, your Baba who doesn't even measure the things.
yeah,
That's sort of the art part of it, but there is the science behind it too.
yeah.
Well, Alan, I want to thank you again so much for coming on the podcast here and telling us about Tinker Labs and the initiative that you're doing. Sounds like it's really cool and it sounds like it's working really well. So definitely keep us updated with any new things, new programs that you got going. When you get that museum going, you got to contact me. That'll be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for inviting me. It was really good talking to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it.